The year is 2026. The world watches as the Middle East, a region long defined by simmering tensions, explodes into open conflict. What began as a shadow war has now drawn in global superpowers, threatening to reshape the geopolitical landscape for decades to come. This is the story of the 2026 Israeli-U.S. Iran conflict, a war that was years in the making. For decades, the rivalry between Iran and Israel has been a central feature of Middle Eastern politics. At its core lies Iran's pursuit of a nuclear program, which Israel views as an existential threat. Alongside this, a proxy war has raged across the region, from Syria and Lebanon to Yemen and Iraq, as both nations vied for influence. Diplomatic efforts, including the JCPOA, saw periods of hope, but deep-seated mistrust and strategic competition always pulled the region back toward the brink. By late 2025, intelligence reports suggested Iran was closer than ever to a nuclear threshold, and the rhetoric from all sides had reached a fever pitch. The stage was set for a confrontation. On the dawn of February 28, 2026, the world awoke to news of Operation Lion's Roar. In a coordinated, preemptive strike, Israeli and United States forces launched a massive air and cyber offensive against Iran. The primary targets were Iran's nuclear facilities at Natanz and Fordo, along with ballistic missile sites and key command and control centers. Precision-guided munitions and advanced stealth aircraft were used to overwhelm Iranian air defenses. Official statements from Washington and Jerusalem cited irrefutable evidence of an imminent threat, claiming the operation was a defensive measure to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran and neutralize its ability to project force through its proxies. The strikes were swift, and initial reports claimed significant damage to Iran's military infrastructure, including the neutralization of several high-ranking commanders within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The world held its breath, waiting for Iran's response. It did not take long. Within hours, Iran's retaliation began, codenamed Wrath of Persepolis. The counterattack was multi-pronged and ferocious. Swarms of drones and a barrage of ballistic missiles were launched toward targets in Israel and U.S. military bases across the Gulf. Israel's Iron Dome and David's Sling defense systems were pushed to their limits, intercepting many incoming projectiles, but some inevitably broke through, striking military installations in civilian areas. Simultaneously, U.S. naval assets in the Persian Gulf and bases in Iraq and the UAE came under fire. The attack was not just from Iranian soil. In the north, Hezbollah, Iran's most powerful proxy, opened a second front, launching a volley of rockets into northern Israel, triggering widespread air raid sirens and forcing millions of Israelis into bomb shelters. The conflict had officially become a multi-front regional war. The escalation was rapid and devastating. As the fighting intensified, the human cost mounted. In Iran, the initial strikes resulted in significant casualties at targeted military sites, but subsequent waves of attacks hit urban centers as the conflict broadened. In Israel, rocket attacks from both Iran and Lebanon caused civilian deaths and widespread panic. The Israeli government issued mass evacuation advisories for communities near the Lebanese border and urged citizens nationwide to remain close to shelters. Similar scenes unfolded across the Gulf, where expatriate communities and local populations faced the new reality of missile threats. International aid organizations began issuing urgent appeals, warning of a looming humanitarian crisis as civilian infrastructure, including power grids and water supplies, were damaged in the crossfire. The images of destruction and displacement filled global news channels, a grim testament to the human toll of modern warfare. Economically, the shockwaves were felt almost immediately. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway through which nearly a quarter of the world's oil passes, effectively became a war zone. Iran, leveraging its geographic advantage, threatened to close the strait, and naval skirmishes between Iranian fast boats and international forces became common. Insurance premiums for oil tankers skyrocketed, and many shipping companies suspended all transit through the Gulf. The result was a sudden and dramatic spike in global oil prices, with Brent crude surging past $200 a barrel. Stock markets around the world tumbled as fears of a global recession took hold. The conflict wasn't just being fought with missiles and drones. It was also being waged on the world's economic lifelines, impacting everything from the price of gasoline to the cost of everyday goods. International reaction was a mixture of condemnation and frantic diplomacy. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session, but a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire was promptly vetoed, reflecting the deep divisions among world powers. The European Union called for de-escalation and offered to mediate, but its influence seemed limited. China and Russia, while officially calling for restraint, were accused by Western analysts of providing tacit support to Iran, viewing the conflict as an opportunity to challenge U.S. dominance in the region. Analysts pointed to years of failed diplomacy and the steady erosion of international norms as key factors behind the escalation. One expert noted, "This wasn't a sudden storm. It was a hurricane we all saw forming for years. Each side miscalculated the other's red lines until there were no lines left to cross. The world was fractured, unable to unite to stop the spiraling violence." Now, as the conflict rages into its second month, the future of the Middle East hangs in the balance. Several scenarios are being debated by strategists. The first, and most optimistic, is a negotiated ceasefire brokered by a coalition of neutral powers. This would require immense diplomatic pressure and significant concessions from all sides. But it remains the primary goal of the international community. A second, more grim possibility is a protracted war of attrition. In this scenario, the fighting continues for months, or even years, devastating the region, causing a permanent global economic crisis and drawing in more countries. The most dangerous scenario, however, is a further escalation. This could involve the use of more destructive weapons, a full-scale ground invasion of Iran, or a direct sustained conflict between the United States and Iran's allies, potentially leading to a confrontation on a scale not seen since the Second World War. From the ashes of diplomacy, this war was born. It is a conflict fueled by decades of animosity, strategic ambition, and mutual fear. The events of 2026 serve as a stark reminder that in an interconnected world, regional conflicts have global consequences, and the path to war is often paved with miscalculation. As the world looks on, the question on everyone's mind is not just how this war will end, but what the world will look like when it's over. The lessons from this crisis will undoubtedly shape international relations for generations. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of global events.